I've had a lot of inquiries recently regarding the variability between air fryers and the impact that may have on cooking instructions. When air fryers first came out, first became very popular, I guess it was during the COVID outbreak, maybe 5 years ago. They just took off. Whether it was YouTube, I don't know, but it went berserk. Everyone was buying air fryers. The problem is that a lot of the products which are made for oven instructions didn't have air fryer instructions on the back of pack, so consumers have got no idea how to cook their instructions. So we were approached to develop air fryer instructions as well as oven instructions for products, so they could go on back of pack. Being the scientist, I wasn't happy with just developing straight away. I needed to understand air fryers and work out how they worked and what happened with them. So we purchased a range of 10 different air fryers, as different as we possibly could get. So different heating methods. Some used an element, a bit like in an electric oven. Some used halogen lights, which took a lot longer to preheat. So we took a complete range. So volumes from a few litres up to several litres, and from power outputs from about a kilowatt, 1,000 watts to 3,000 watts. And we looked at the performance of them. So the first thing we did was just to look at the dial settings. So if you set it to 200 degrees, is it doing 200 degrees? And the answer to that was no. The inaccuracy in the dial settings was, and also digital settings, was tremendous. We were finding some operating 20 degrees less than the set temperatures, whereas some would operate at the correct temperature. So if you're thinking about trying to develop an instruction in those air fryers, you can have a huge variability. We can calibrate the air fryers and work them at the correct temperature, but a consumer, their air fryer might be operating at 180 when they set it to 200. So that wouldn't heat a product safely, nor to the best quality. So that was one of the concerns for me. Second one we looked at was things like dial timers. A lot of air fryers, the idea behind them is they cook a little bit quicker. You put maybe a smaller portion there than you would do for an oven. But we were finding that if you put, a 3-minute cook time, for example, on dial timing, so it's the clockwork timers on air fryers, you were getting way different cook times, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute, maybe 4 minutes. So again, that's not an accurate way to heat your product. So there are issues really with the accuracy of the dial timers, as well as the temperature settings. And then the third issue we found with them really was down to the airflow rates in them. So some air fryers had a really fast airflow rate, a really powerful fan. Some air fryers had a much slower heating rate, so that would impact on the cook times too. We all know that we tend to use 20 degrees less when we're cooking products in a fan oven compared to an electric oven. Well, the same can be applied really for all the different air fryers out there. With a high airflow rate, it would take less time in that particular air fryer than in an air fryer with a lower, with a higher fan rate. Yeah, I think that's right around. So there's kind of a whole load of issues that are starting to come out. The other problems we were finding was the preheat times. Preheat, people like to use air fryers with no preheat. It's one of the conveniences on them. The problem is that we were finding the preheat time could be anything from a minute. So set it to 200 degrees. How long does it take to get to 200 degrees? Anything from a minute up to 20 minutes. So some of the halogen, which is effectively a glorified light bulb, heating methods were actually taking up to 20 minutes to get to temperature. So if you've only got a 5-minute cook time in your product and you don't use a preheat for that particular air fryer, we were finding that it was nowhere near the product, would be nowhere near cooked, still raw after the 5-minute cook time. We've noticed that several companies that offer cooking instruction work are actually suggesting that maybe a 1400 watt air fryer is used. So they're basing the cook times and the design of the cooking instructions on the most popular, which maybe is around 1400 watts. That's fine. The issue with it is that the 1400 watts is actually the energy required by the air fryer and not the energy that's delivered to the product. We could put an analogy here with microwave ovens. When you buy a microwave oven, you know its rating, so say 800 watts. But that actually means that 800 watts goes into your food. It doesn't mean it uses 800 watts. You can buy 3 800 watt microwave ovens, and each one will use a different amount of energy from the mains power. So one might be 1200 watts, one might be 900 watts, one might be 1500 watts. So if we were to buy those ovens based on those ratings, we wouldn't know how they would heat the product. But we know they're 800 watts because that's a new method of testing the microwave ovens. For air fryers, the issue is there is no method of looking at the energy going into the food product. So when you buy a 1400 watt air fryer, it simply means it uses 1400 watts of energy. It doesn't tell you how much of that goes into the food. So if we take 3 air fryers, all 1400 watts, one of them is very high airflow rate, very small capacity, very well insulated. And then another one may be very low airflow rate, very large capacity, maybe a glass, really thick, slow to heat container. And then consider how they might heat. The small one with high airflow rate that's well insulated will heat up very quickly. It'll hold its energy very well and transfer most of that energy into the product. The one which is a much bigger capacity, maybe the large glass one, will take much longer to get to temperature. It's got a lower airflow rate. Most of the energy is going into heating the glass. So with a fairly short cooking time, 10 minutes or something like that, then the product really isn't going to heat very well at all. So the fact that you're just specifying 1400 watts doesn't tell you anything about how the product may heat. What's really important if you're going to develop air fryer instructions is to pick a large range of air fryers and understand how each one may heat. So you're making sure that you're replicating what's out there with consumers. And it really is a problem. When air fryer instructions first came along, Camden BRI would only kind of recommend instructions or suggest for products which are sort of safe. What do I mean by sort of safe? Well, think of chips. If you want to air fry your chips, you need your chips to get to 100 degrees in order for them to be crispy and the right colours. So your target temperature for products like that is 100 degrees. So if your air fryer isn't working brilliantly in terms of its performance, then it might not get to 100, maybe it gets to 80, but that's still going to leave a safe product because our target food safe temperatures and times is 70 degrees for 2 minutes. So for chips, it's not the end of the world. Maybe in some air fryers, when you follow a developed instruction, they won't be quite as crispy. In other air fryers, they might be over crispy, but they should all be safe because you're targeting a higher temperature than 70 degrees. Then came along chicken pieces, then came along whole chickens. If you're trying to cook a whole chicken in an air fryer, there can be issues with ensuring that all areas of that product will get to 70 degrees. So if we're taking our variability that you've seen between air fryers, you may well end up with maybe you target an air fryer to develop your instruction, it will work in that air fryer, but then you have another air fryer which is lower fan speed, it's not particularly well insulated, it's got low energy going into the food stuff, then you might find that any instruction you developed in another air fryer won't achieve 70 degrees. And that's an issue for food safety. So the kind of products you're going to be heating in your air fryers really needs to be considered very carefully, and the techniques that you're using for developing air fryer instructions. So the Camden BRI air fryer protocol will use the worst air fryers that we found during our testing. There is a white paper available on that if you have a look on the website. We will use that to develop instructions along with an average performing air fryer and a better performing air fryer. So you'll get a balance of results from the air fryer instructions that we do. Usually the worst performing one in terms of its ability to heat the product will take longest, so that's what the instruction will be based on. But we can also then check within those same times that are being used and temperature settings that it won't overheat in the better performing, the faster heating air fryers. But I would urge real concern and caution in developing air fryer instructions for products. Just be absolutely sure that you're confident that your product will hit the required thermal process, 70 degrees for 2 minutes, in as many air fryers as possible that consumers may own. If you need any help with this, please give me a call. We've got loads of experience. We've got, I think, around 40 or 50 air fryers available at Camden, and we will monitor temperatures during cooking. We calibrate on day of use, so we know that the instructions we're producing will work for you. Thank you.